The Keth Empire ships hung in space like hungry vultures, their black hulls scarred from countless raids. They had been attacking human colonies for decades now, taking whatever they wanted and leaving destruction behind. Today was different, though. Today they had gone too far. Ambassador Lee walked slowly through the empty halls of the Galactic Council building. His footsteps echoed off the marble walls, each sound a reminder of how alone humanity had become. The other alien races had all left hours ago, refusing to even listen to his emergency session request. They never cared when humans died. The council chamber felt enormous when empty. Lee stood at the center podium where so many human ambassadors before him had begged for justice, for protection, for just basic recognition that human lives mattered. The holographic displays still showed the aftermath of New Haven Colony. Burned farms, destroyed homes, empty playgrounds where children would never play again. 2.3 million people, gone in a single day. Lee activated his communication device and began recording what he knew would be humanity's final diplomatic message to the galaxy. His voice was steady, professional, despite the fury burning in his chest. To the Galactic Council and all member species, he began, the Keth Empire has destroyed New Haven Colony. Every man, woman and child living there is dead. This marks the 47th unprovoked attack on human settlements in the past 5 years. We have filed complaints. We have requested mediation. We have offered compensation for any perceived wrongs. All have been ignored. He paused, thinking of the families he had known on New Haven, the farmer named Park, who grew the sweetest apples in 3 sectors, the teacher called Kim, who had started a school for both human and alien children, the doctor named Cho, who treated anyone who needed help, regardless of species, all dead now. The chamber doors hissed open, and Council Leader Vextar entered with several other alien officials. The Keth leader was massive, nearly 3 meters, tall with 4 arms and skin like polished stone. His compound eyes glittered with amusement as he saw Lee standing alone. "Still here, little human?" Vextar's translator made his voice sound like grinding metal. "I thought you would have scurried away by now." Lee turned to face them, his diplomatic training keeping his expression neutral. "I requested this emergency session to address the massacre at New Haven." "Massacre?" One of the other aliens laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "It was simply resource acquisition. Your people were inefficiently using valuable farmland. They were growing food to feed. Refugee camps on 3 different worlds," Lee replied quietly, "including camps full of your own people who fled the border wars." Vextar waved a dismissive hand. "Your species has had 200 years to prove your worth to this galaxy. Instead, you waste time on charity and sentiment. You build hospitals instead of warships. You send teachers instead of soldiers. You negotiate instead of conquering." The council leader moved closer, his massive form towering over Lee. "Face reality, human. Your kind lacks the strength for true civilization. You are prey animals pretending to be predators. Accept your place in the natural order or face complete extinction." Lee felt his hands begin to tremble, not from fear, but from the effort of controlling 2 centuries of accumulated rage. Every unpunished attack, every ignored plea for help, every dead human child whose killer walked free because the galaxy saw humanity as weak. "We have shown you mercy for 2 centuries, Lee said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Do not mistake our patience for weakness." The aliens burst into laughter. Vextar's compound eyes sparkled with cruel amusement. "Patience? You mean cowardice. Your species hides behind words because you lack the courage for action. What will you do, human? File another complaint?" Lee straightened his jacket and picked up his diplomatic case. As he walked toward the exit, he spoke without turning around. "This was your last chance to choose peace. Remember that in the days to come." More laughter followed him as he left the chamber. The sound echoed through the empty halls like the mockery of ghosts. Lee made his way to the human embassy's secure communication room. His fingers moved across the quantum transmitter controls, entering codes that had not been used in over 200 years. The message he sent contained only 5 words, but they would change everything. The silence ends at dawn. Deep beneath, Luna's surface, in chambers that had been sealed since humanity's darkest hour, Ancient systems began to stir. Warning lights flickered to life for the first time in generations. Computer cores that had been dormant awakened with a hungry hum. The galaxy had made its choice. Now humanity would make theirs. The time for patience was over. The alarm woke Admiral Kim from restless sleep at exactly 3 in the morning. She had been dreaming of her grandmother's stories again, tales of ancient wars that most humans preferred to forget. The red light pulsing on her bedside communicator told her those stories were about to become reality. Kim rolled out of bed and dressed in her old military uniform, the one she had not worn in 15 years. Her hands shook slightly as she fastened the buttons. The message on her secure terminal contained codes she had hoped never to see. Codes that had been passed down through 5 generations of her family, waiting for a day that might never come. That today was today. She made her way through the Lunar City underground tunnels, past the civilian areas where families slept peacefully, unaware that their world was about to change forever. The deeper she went, the older the passages became. These tunnels predated the peace treaty, built during humanity's most desperate time when survival meant preparing for the unthinkable. The security checkpoint was manned by Colonel Park, a man she had not seen in 20 years. His face was grim as he scanned Kim's identification and compared it to genetic records that went back centuries. "I hoped this day would never come," Park said quietly, as the heavy doors unsealed with a hiss of ancient machinery. "So did I," Kim replied. "But the galaxy has made its choice." The corridor ahead stretched into darkness, lit only by emergency lighting that had not been activated since before Kim was born. Her boots echoed on metal floors as she walked deeper into Luna's heart, following a path her ancestors had carved through solid rock 200 years ago. The final door was massive, made of materials that did not exist in any known database. As Kim placed her palm on the scanner, she wondered if her great-great-grandmother had stood in this same spot during the last activation. The scanner hummed, comparing her DNA to records that had been sealed for generations. Identity confirmed. "Admiral Kim Tae-yeon, genetic match to activation sequence 7. Welcome back, Admiral." The voice belonged to an AI that was older than most human colonies. As the door slid open, Kim stepped into a chamber so vast that its far walls disappeared into shadow. Emergency lights flickered on one by one, revealing humanity's greatest secret. The warship stretched before her like a sleeping giant. Its hull was not metal or ceramic like normal ships, but something that seemed to bend light around itself. In the dim lighting, it was hard to tell where the ship ended and empty space began. This was not a vessel built for exploration or trade. Every line of its design spoke of a single purpose: total destruction. Kim walked up the boarding ramp, her steps echoing in the silence. The ship's interior was as dark and foreboding as its exterior. No comfortable quarters or recreational areas here. This was a weapon, pure and simple, built by a humanity that the galaxy had never seen. "Computer, activate all systems," Kim commanded. As she reached the bridge, "Activation requires confirmation of Emergency Protocol 7, the AI responded. "Please state the reason for awakening." Kim closed her eyes for a moment, thinking of New Haven Colony, of the children who would never grow up, of the families torn apart by alien cruelty. When she opened them again, her voice was steady and cold. "The Keth Empire has committed genocide against human civilians. The Galactic Council has refused to act. Humanity is now at war. Confirmation accepted. Beginning full activation sequence. Estimated time to combat readiness, 6 hours." Around Kim, the ship began to wake up. Lights flickered on throughout the massive vessel. Computer cores that had been dormant for centuries hummed to life. Weapon systems that existed nowhere else in the galaxy ran diagnostic checks on armaments that could crack planets. But the ship was only part of it. Across human space, other systems were awakening too. On Keth Prime, a janitor named Lee, who had worked in the alien capital for 30 years, opened a maintenance panel and began typing codes into systems that no Keth engineer understood. On the trade world of New Titan, shopkeeper Cho activated communication arrays hidden in her store's basement. On the diplomatic station at Alpha Centauri, Cultural attaché Han began uploading programs that had been waiting in computer networks for decades. They were sleeper agents, ordinary. Humans who had lived normal lives while carrying the most dangerous secret in the galaxy. Their families did not know. Their friends did not suspect. For generations, they had waited for a signal that might never come. Today, that signal arrived. Kim settled into the command chair that had been waiting for her since the day she was born. Her genetic code had been programmed into these systems before her great-grandmother was even conceived. Every woman in her family line had been prepared for this moment, hoping it would never come, but ready if it did. "Admiral," the AI announced, "all sleeper cells have confirmed activation. Phase 1 assets are in position, awaiting your orders." Kim looked out at the vast weapon that surrounded her. Humanity had built this ship not from hatred, but from love. Love for their children who deserved to grow up safe. Love for their future, that no alien empire had the right to steal. Love for peace, which sometimes required the threat of total war to maintain. "Begin Phase 1, she commanded. "Let the galaxy remember why we chose peace." The hunt was about to begin. Captain Han stood on the bridge of the Nemesis, watching his tactical display with cold satisfaction. The Keith battle cruiser, Death's Glory, had been there just moments ago, a massive ship bristling with weapons and armor that had terrorized human colonies for decades. Now there was nothing but empty space where it had been. Not even debris remained. "Sir, the Death's Glory didn't explode," reported Lieutenant SEO from the sensor station. "It just stopped existing, like someone erased it from reality." Han nodded, his expression unchanged. The young lieutenant was new to this kind of warfare. She had grown up during peacetime, believing that humans were just another weak species struggling to survive in a hostile galaxy. She was learning the truth now, and Han could see the shock in her eyes. "Captain," called out Ensign Bayek from the communications post, "we're detecting another Keth patrol group approaching from Sector 7, 3 heavy cruisers and a support ship. Are they responding to distress calls from the ships we've already eliminated?" Han asked. "No, sir. There were no distress calls. The ships we targeted never had time to send any signals. That was the beauty of their technology. The aliens thought human jump drives were primitive because they were slow and used enormous amounts of energy. What they didn't understand was that human drives didn't just move ships through space. They moved them through dimensions that existed parallel to normal reality. The Nemesis wasn't just invisible to Keth sensors. It was partially outside their universe entirely. Han watched as the 4 Keth ships moved into position, hunting for an enemy they would never see coming. The lead cruiser was the Bone Crusher, commanded by Admiral Thexmore himself. This was the alien who had personally ordered the destruction of New Haven Colony, who had laughed when human children were burned. "Alive in their schools, weapons target the Bone Crusher," Han ordered. "Full quantum disruption. Targeting locked, sir. Quantum torpedoes loaded and ready. Fire." The torpedo that launched from the Nemesis existed in 7 dimensions simultaneously. To the Keth ships, it appeared as nothing more than a slight distortion. In space, like heat waves rising from hot pavement, by the time their sensors detected the threat, it was already too late. The Bone Crusher simply ceased to exist. One moment it was a kilometer-long warship with a crew of 3,000. The next moment there was empty space. No explosion, no flash of light, no final transmission. The quantum torpedo had unraveled the atomic bonds holding the ship together, scattering its matter across multiple dimensions where it could never be recovered. Admiral Thexmore, the alien who had killed so many humans, was gone as if he had never been born. "Communications. Are we receiving any updates from our ground agents?" Han asked. Communications Officer Yoon looked up from her console, a slight smile on her face. "Yes, sir. Agent Park reports that the Keith Prime defense grid is completely compromised. Agent Cho has successfully infiltrated their military command network. Agent Lee has taken control of their orbital shipyards." Han felt a grim satisfaction. The aliens had no idea how thoroughly they had been infiltrated. For 200 years, while they laughed at human weakness, human agents had been quietly mapping every detail of their society, learning their languages, studying their technology, and most importantly, identifying their weaknesses. The janitor who cleaned the Keth military headquarters every night for 30 years was actually Colonel Park, a former human special forces officer. The trade representative who negotiated shipping contracts with Keth merchants was Captain Cho, an expert in electronic warfare. The cultural exchange student who had studied at Keth universities for decades was Agent Lee, a master engineer who understood their systems better than they did. "Sir," Yun continued, "Agent Park is requesting permission to begin Phase 2 operations." "What's the status of the remaining Keth fleet in this sector?" Han asked. 7 ships remaining, all converging on our last known position. They still can't see us, but they're firing at random coordinates, hoping to get lucky. Han watched the tactical display as Keth ships fired desperately into empty space. Their energy weapons lit up the darkness, but they were shooting at ghosts. The Nemesis existed 3 seconds ahead of normal time, making it impossible for conventional weapons to target. "Let them waste their ammunition," Han said. "Yun, tell Agent Park to proceed with Phase 2. It's time to show these aliens what human patience has accomplished." On the main screen, Han watched as the remaining Keth ships suddenly stopped firing. Their formation broke apart as ship after ship began experiencing what appeared to be massive system failures. Engines shut down, weapons powered off, life support systems flickered and died. What the Keth crews didn't understand was that their ships weren't malfunctioning. The human agents embedded in their society had spent decades installing hidden programs in every piece of Keth technology. Backdoors that could be activated with a single command. Programs that looked like normal maintenance software but were actually sophisticated weapons designed to turn their own systems against them. "Captain," reported Ensign Bake, "we're receiving a transmission from the Keth command ship. It's Admiral Vexkar himself." Han smiled coldly. Vexkar was the alien who had personally supervised the massacre at New Haven, who had ordered his soldiers to hunt down human children hiding in the ruins of their homes. Put him on screen. The holographic display flickered to life, showing the interior of a Keth command bridge in chaos. Smoke filled the air as alien crew members ran back and forth, desperately trying to restore their failing systems. In the center of it all stood Admiral Vexkar, his 4 arms gesturing wildly as he screamed orders that no one could follow. When he saw Han's face on his own screen, Vexkar fell silent. His compound eyes widened in terror as understanding finally dawned. "Impossible," he whispered. "Your species is weak. Your technology is primitive. You cannot be doing this." Han leaned forward in his command chair. "You destroyed New Haven Colony. You killed 2.3 million innocent people. Did you think we would forget?" Vexkar's voice cracked with fear. "What are you? What are you really?" The transmission cut to static as the Keth command ship's power systems finally failed completely. In the darkness of space, the alien vessel drifted helplessly, its crew trapped inside a tomb of their own making. Han turned to his crew. "Signal Admiral Kim. Phase 3 is ready to begin. It's time to pay a visit to Keth Prime itself." The hunt was just beginning. The Nemesis appeared. Above Keth Prime like a dark omen, its hull so black it seemed to swallow the light from the system's twin suns. The massive warship had traveled here through dimensions that existed between heartbeats, arriving without warning in the heart of the Keth Empire's most protected space. On the planet's surface, alarms began screaming across every major city. The Keth had built their orbital defense network over centuries, a web of weapon platforms and shield generators that could destroy entire fleets. It was supposed to be impenetrable, capable of protecting their homeworld from any threat the galaxy could produce. The defenses lasted exactly 17 seconds after the Nemesis arrived. It wasn't weapons that destroyed them. The human ship simply existed in their space, and its presence created quantum distortions that made normal technology impossible. Energy shields flickered and died. Weapon systems shut down as their targeting computers couldn't process what they were seeing. The orbital platforms began drifting out of position as their navigation systems failed, unable to calculate coordinates in space that had been fundamentally altered. Deep in the Keth military command center, General Zekthor watched his defense grid collapse on the main display. Red warning lights covered every screen as system after system went offline. His forearms moved frantically across control panels, trying to understand what was happening to his supposedly invincible defenses. "Sir," reported his communications. "Officer, we're receiving a transmission from the unknown vessel. It's broadcasting on all frequencies simultaneously." "Put it on the main screen," Zekthor ordered, though his voice trembled with fear he tried to hide. The display flickered, showing the bridge of the human ship. At its center sat a woman in a dark uniform that seemed to absorb light like her vessel's hull. Admiral Kim looked directly into the camera, and her eyes held the weight of 2 centuries of accumulated grief. "People of the galaxy," she began, her voice carrying to every inhabited world through quantum transmissions that bypassed normal communication networks. "For 200 years, you have known humanity as traders, farmers, and diplomats. You have seen us as weak because we chose negotiation over conquest, mercy over vengeance. On 1,000 different worlds, alien species stopped what they were doing to listen. The transmission was impossible to block or ignore, reaching every communication device simultaneously. You were wrong," Kim continued. "We did not choose peace because we were weak. We chose peace because we alone among the galaxy's species understand the true cost of war. We are the children of a world that burned for 3 centuries, where brother fought brother until our planet ran red with blood. We learned what total war really means." On Keth Prime, Agent Cho sat in her small apartment, where she had lived quietly for 30 years. To her neighbors, she was just a maintenance worker who kept the city's automated systems running smoothly. They had no idea that she was actually a former human special forces colonel who understood their technology better than the engineers who built it. Cho opened her laptop and began typing commands that she had memorized decades ago. Her fingers moved across the keyboard with practiced precision, entering access codes that had been hidden in Keith computer networks since before she was born. Around her, the apartment's lights flickered as massive amounts of data began flowing through communication lines that were never meant to carry such traffic. "Execute Protocol 7, she whispered and pressed enter. Across the planet, chaos erupted. Traffic control systems in major cities began routing vehicles into impossible patterns, creating gridlock that trapped millions of Keth citizens in place. Power grids fluctuated wildly, plunging entire districts into darkness before blazing with light bright enough to damage sensitive equipment. Water treatment plants shut down, while automated factories began producing random products instead of essential supplies. The Keth government tried desperately to regain control, but every system they touched turned against them. Their own computers had become weapons in human hands. Similar scenes played out across dozens of star systems. On the trade world of Vexnar, shopkeeper Lee activated programs hidden in the planet's financial networks, causing the alien stock market to collapse in minutes. On the military outpost at Carthon, Janitor Park triggered a cascade failure in the base's fusion reactors, forcing the evacuation of the entire installation. Agent Han, who had posed as a cultural exchange student for 40 years, walked calmly through the halls of the Keth Academy of Sciences. As he passed each computer terminal, he uploaded viruses that would corrupt every database the aliens had spent centuries building. Their scientific knowledge, their military secrets, their historical records, all of it would be destroyed by programs that had been waiting patiently for this moment. Back on the Nemesis, Admiral Kim watched the reports flooding in from human agents across the galaxy. Every alien species that had participated in humanity's oppression was experiencing the same systematic collapse. Their own technology was turning against them, guided by human hands that had spent generations learning their weaknesses. "Admiral," reported Communications Officer Yoon, "we're receiving surrender requests from 17 different governments. The Vexnar Confederacy is offering to pay reparations for all attacks on human colonies. The Zekmor Empire wants to negotiate an immediate ceasefire." Kim's expression didn't change. "Tell them that the time for negotiation ended when they chose to murder our children on New Haven." On Keth Prime, General Zekthor watched his civilization crumble in real time. Every screen in his command center showed the same message. System compromised, human override active. His planet's entire technological infrastructure had been turned into a weapon against his own people. "How is this possible?" he whispered. "Our security protocols were perfect. No one could have infiltrated our systems so completely." The answer came from Agent Cho's apartment, where she was uploading the final phase of her mission. Data that had been collected over 2 centuries began flooding into alien communication networks. Personnel files showing that trusted employees were actually human agents. Technical specifications revealing how human primitive technology was actually far more advanced than anything the aliens possessed. Most damaging of all, recordings of alien leaders laughing as they planned attacks on human colonies. The galaxy watched in horror as the truth was revealed. The species they had dismissed as weak prey had been studying them, infiltrating them, and preparing for this moment since the day they first made contact with alien civilization. Kim's final words, echoed across 1,000 worlds. "We offered you peace and you chose war. We showed you mercy, and you responded with genocide. Now you will learn why we spent 3 centuries fighting among ourselves before we ever left our home planet. Now you will understand what happens when humanity stops being patient." The Keith. Empire fell in a single day, brought down not by weapons or armies, but by the patient work of agents who had spent their entire lives preparing for this moment. Their government collapsed, their military scattered, and their people finally understood that they had been living at the mercy of those they thought were their victims. The reckoning had come at last. The surrender came not with fanfare or ceremony, but with a simple message transmitted across every communication channel in the galaxy. 17 different alien governments, empires that had ruled star systems for thousands of years, all sent the same desperate plea in unison. "We yield. Please stop." There had been no great space battles, no heroic last stands, no dramatic explosions lighting up the void. The war that reshaped the galaxy lasted exactly 72 hours from start to finish. In that time, not a single shot was fired by human forces. They didn't need to. The aliens had defeated themselves with their own technology, turned against them by agents who had waited generations for this moment. Engineer. So walked through the corridors of the Nemesis, her boots echoing in the vast emptiness of the ship. She had spent the last 3 days monitoring systems that could crack planets, watching power levels that could fuel 1,000 cities. Now it was time to put the giant back to sleep. "All primary weapon systems offline," she reported to Admiral Kim over the ship's communication system. Quantum manipulation drives powering down, hull phase shifters returning to standby mode. Around her, the massive warship began its transition back to dormancy. Lights dimmed throughout the vessel as power was rerouted away from weapons that existed nowhere else in the galaxy. The ship that had appeared above Keth Prime like an angel of death was becoming invisible once again, fading into the shadows between dimensions where it had waited for 2 centuries. On the bridge, Admiral Kim stood before the main viewing screen, watching Earth grow larger as they approached Luna. Home looked the same as it always had. Blue oceans, white clouds, continents where billions of humans lived their daily lives unaware of what had just transpired in their name. Those people would wake up tomorrow in a galaxy that feared and respected them, though most would never know why. "Admiral," reported Communications Officer Yoon, "we're receiving final status reports from all our agents across the galaxy. Agent, Park confirms that Keth Prime's government has officially dissolved. Agent Cho reports that the Vexnar Trade Confederation is offering full reparations for attacks on our colonies. Agent Lee says the Zekmor military has begun withdrawing from all disputed territories." Kim nodded, feeling exhaustion settle into her bones. She had not slept in 3 days, carrying the weight of humanity's response to genocide. Every decision had been hers to make, every life affected by her commands. The responsibility of wielding such power was almost unbearable. "What about casualties?" she asked quietly. "Remarkably low on all sides," Yoon replied. "Our precision targeting and system infiltration meant minimal loss of life. The aliens lost some ships and infrastructure, but their populations are largely intact. Most casualties were from panic and accidents, not our direct actions." That had been important to Kim. Humanity had not chosen this path out of bloodthirst or desire for conquest. They had simply reached the point where their patience was exhausted. The goal was never to become the monsters that had terrorized their colonies, but to show the galaxy what those monsters had awakened. As the Nemesis approached Luna, the ancient docking systems came online automatically. Hidden doors in the moon's surface opened to receive the ship, massive mechanical arms extending to guide it back into the chamber where it had waited since humanity's darkest hour. Soon, the vessel would disappear completely, becoming once again a secret known only to a select few. But before it vanished, Admiral Kim had one final message to deliver. She stood in the ship's communication center, facing a camera that would broadcast her words to every inhabited world in the galaxy. Behind her, the bridge of the Nemesis served as a stark reminder of what humanity was capable of when pushed too far. "People of the galaxy," she began, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had just reshaped the balance of power among the stars. "The war is over. Your governments have surrendered, and we accept that surrender. But understand this, what happened these past 3 days was not a conquest. It was a reminder. On alien worlds across the galaxy, billions of beings watched in silence. The species that had terrorized human colonies, that had laughed at human weakness, that had dismissed human potential, all of them now hung on every word from this human woman who had brought their empires to their knees without firing a shot. For 2 centuries, we gave you silence while you butchered our people," Kim continued. "We offered you peace and you responded with violence. We showed you mercy and you repaid it with genocide. That silence was not weakness, it was patience. And our patience has limits." The camera zoomed in on Kim's face, showing eyes that held the grief of New Haven Colony and the determination of a species that would never again allow such atrocities to go unpunished. "We can give you 200 more years of silence if you prove you have learned from your mistakes. The choice is yours. Choose wisely." The transmission ended, leaving the galaxy in stunned quiet. Over the following months, the effects of humanity's awakening became clear. Trade routes that had been controlled by alien empires for millennia were open to all species. Aggressive expansion by military powers ceased overnight. Pirates and raiders who had preyed on weak colonies found their ships mysteriously malfunctioning whenever they approached human space. The Galactic Council, which had ignored human pleas for justice for decades, suddenly discovered a newfound interest in protecting the rights of smaller species. New laws were passed, treaties were signed, and for the first time in galactic history, the strong began protecting the weak instead of exploiting them. Most remarkably, it all happened without humanity having to actively enforce anything. The mere knowledge that the Nemesis existed somewhere in the darkness, that human agents were embedded throughout alien society, that humanity's patience had limits, that knowledge alone was enough to maintain peace. Engineer so sealed the final blast door as the Nemesis settled into its berth beneath Luna's surface. The massive chamber fell silent once again, filled only with the quiet hum of maintenance systems that would keep the ship ready for another awakening that might come in decades, centuries, or never at all. In the depths of Luna, surrounded by technology that could end civilizations, the Nemesis waited in patient darkness. Above, humanity continued its daily life of farming, trading, and building, peaceful activities that now carried the weight of absolute authority. The galaxy had learned what happened when you pushed humanity too far. The sleeping giant had stirred, shown its true strength, and then chosen to return to sleep. But it would never be forgotten that humanity's greatest weapon was not their technology, or their hidden ships, or their secret agents. It was their patience. And everyone now knew that patience could end